Third-party support is super important for the sustained success of the Switch, and while we have some solid examples here in 2017, I think it's safe to say we're all looking for a little bit more as we enter year 2 and beyond. Well, this weekend a couple of companies revealed their roadmap for the Switch, and it lays an interesting future for Nintendo's newest console. What's up, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. I've got Jake and Gabe here, and both EA and Bandai Namco came out with a little bit more info on how they plan to pursue putting titles on the Switch, with Electronic Arts stating they'll wait and see how FIFA 18 does before promising more of their catalog, and Bandai Namco saying we're just going to release new Nintendo Switch titles one after another.
All right, so Capcom did something similar with Street Fighter. They put that out before they did a whole bunch of other stuff for Switch, and that performed very well. They were very happy with the sales of Street Fighter 2. Ultimate Fighter, whatever edition it happens to be on Switch, and they said that now that they see that it's doing well, they will continue to support. So it's a tactic that multiple companies are using. We've seen 2K mention that as well, saying, hey, you know, we have NBA 2K18 and WWE 2K18 coming this year, and you know, sales and how that does will dictate support. You mentioned Namco already. They had a lot of people requesting Dragon Ball FighterZ come to the Switch because it would fit in so well. And they said, hey, you know, maybe let's wait to see how Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 does. So this is a sentiment that so many companies are carrying over, and I don't necessarily know how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have some saying, oh, we're so committed, but let's wait and see how this does. And you have some saying like, hey, we're just going to bring everything. And you know, the sales of the Switch are strong. That is undeniable. The market for new games seems to also be just really, really intense right now. So I think, you know, Bandai Namco is smart to continue to put Switch titles out. But EA is taking a more slow and steady approach. Their VP, Patrick Soderlund, had an interesting quote where he said, so for us, it's about supporting the platform, building technology for the platform, testing it out with big things like FIFA and maybe a couple of others. We'll see. And if they go well, I see no reason why we shouldn't have as much of our portfolio on that platform as possible. I hope we get there. That would be my personal ambition. Now, FIFA 18 is interesting because it's not running on the Frostbite engine. And, you know, he talked about how EA is moving towards Frostbite 3 and having that be their main, engine. So how does that impact future Switch development? And I think this is something that could be a little bit of an obstacle for getting games.
I think there's an easy solution. You contract a company to do it. That happens a lot. The main team that works on FIFA isn't the one making the Switch version. You sublet that work to somebody else. Have another developer work on that. I think that's how you do it. It's impossible to expect Battlefront 2 to come to Switch and have it be the exact same game that DICE makes for the other platforms. So we're gonna have to make some concessions as far as that goes.
Well, and to me, this just kind of further proves that the Switch is diving into uncharted territory with its hybrid nature. And obviously, I know there's some technical differences, like you were talking about, with contracting out different companies to kind of port it over to port their games over to the Switch. But I think that also companies see a great potential in this hybrid nature and see that the Switch is kind of pushing into new territory for video games. And I think that while they see massive potential, they're also a little bit shaky of how the public will receive it. And then, so they're taking kind of tentative steps to, okay, we're going to put some games over that people like no matter what, like FIFA. He has a huge audience, and then they're going to see how that does on this half portable, half home console system, and I think go from there, which I think is smart, and I don't think it's really anything to view negatively. I think, if anything, it just shows that they see the potential in the Switch, but just are being cautious, which is business savvy.
I think one of the... I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I was going to say, I think one of the important things with this wait and see approach is you have to make sure the games are good. If FIFA comes out and it's good, people will buy it. People want a portable FIFA, and especially one that you can play you can't play the single player, the big old campaign thing, but you can do my Ultimate Team or whatever the FIFA equivalent is of that. You can have all of that. Your career mode, you can take it on the go. That's something that I would assume is appealing to fans of the sport. So if they make a good port that people generally like, good word of mouth will spread, and the game will do well. But if you're just throwing stuff out there just because FIFA's a big brand, let's just throw a game out there, and the game isn't good, it's gonna hurt the sales, and it's gonna hurt the future for EA on Switch in general.
Right, and it looks like EA is taking the smart approach. They are trying to bring a full-fledged FIFA. It doesn't have every feature, but for the most part, it's there. And the first time they've been able to do something like that you can take with you. NBA 2K, as far as we know, is doing a similar thing of bringing a fully fledged game. And I think, frankly, the wait and see approach is fine, but I don't feel that we're at a point where there needs to be so much caution. I feel like companies like Bandai Namco are going to benefit from putting titles out, and there always is the fear that Nintendo dominates the software market on their own platforms, but we've seen extreme sales for a lot of games thus far, and that's only going to grow as we enter the fall months, the holiday months, the second year, things of that sort. So I think the companies like Capcom, like Bandai Namco, and even 2K to an extent that are taking a little bit of a first round risk are going to benefit tremendously because they will have that opportunity of a more empty market, and their games then, even if they are ports, have a chance to succeed far more than they would if every company was putting stuff out. But I guess then my next question is, do we foresee any of these companies reaching a point where they're like, not worth it? Or do you think that, contrary to what they're saying, even if FIFA 18 isn't the biggest seller, that EA will take note of the Switch overall sales and want a piece of that pie?
To answer your question, I think the company that is like most likely to just say like, okay, we tried it, this is not for us. It's Bethesda, actually. Skyrim. I think that game comes out, and I don't know, maybe a ton of people buy Skyrim. I have no idea, but people that are really into Skyrim, they want to play it where it looks and plays best, and where they can do their mods, and which is on PC. So I don't know what a Skyrim Switch version does, and I have a feeling, and again, I could totally be wrong, but Skyrim might just come and go, and we never see Bethesda on the Switch again. Alternatively, Activision, what are they like? They're not doing anything else. So like it's just interesting to see the way that so many of these companies are handling things. Activision at one point was just like one of the biggest publishers in gaming, and not that they're not now. They still have, obviously, Destiny. They have.
No, they're massive. Call of Duty, Destiny, all the Blizzard things.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, for like Nintendo, like none of that stuff is gonna like translate. I think Destiny constantly being online, Call of Duty just being so focused online as well, and the Switch just geared more towards local multiplayer. So what do they do? I'm still waiting for them to try to like dip their toe a little bit into the Switch. But I do think that if any one of the companies says hey, we gave this a try and it's not gonna be the route for us, I see Bethesda having more of that reaction maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at sort of the ones recently, EA, 2K, Capcom, Bandai, I mean, on one hand, you're like, okay, well, EA and 2K definitely have the money and the resources to dive in, but on the other hand, their games are of a bigger caliber that maybe it is a little bit more of a chore to bring them over. Things like Battlefront 2, things like eventually Borderlands 3, do we get these games? Obviously not Red Dead Redemption 2, whereas Bandai Namco, Capcom putting out more, genre titles and more niche titles, maybe they see more success akin to something like the 3DS. And I think that's important as well. How are these companies viewing it? We just talked about Michael Pachter in another video viewing it as a portable. If EA views this as a portable, obviously it's going to have a different mentality when deciding what projects to put on the Switch. If they view it as a home console, it's a whole different story. So I think a lot of this is going to be up to the individual companies, and we're seeing that thus far. But I would hope that the overall sales and the market is fertile enough for many of these games to succeed. So I hope that, yes, Mario Odyssey is going to sell super well. Yes, Splatoon 2 sold super well. I hope we also get really good sales for FIFA 18, for NBA 2K18, so that there is no reason, no concrete evidence for some of these bigger publishers to pass on the system.
Yeah, and the very last thing I'll say about Capcom, they have some very cool stuff coming up. Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, those games are good. Professor Layton, Monster Hunter, although it's not coming to anywhere that isn't Japan, Monster Hunter Double Cross. But, Capcom also has a history of doing 3DS Zelda games, or not 3DS, Game Boy Zelda games. They had the Minish Cap. That was a Capcom game. Mm-hmm. So, if they can keep doing stuff like that and maybe just borrow IP like they did with Minish Cap, like Capcom has a history of doing very good stuff on handheld Nintendo platforms, and if this is what Capcom sees it as, maybe they continue that way there.
Yeah, keeping the sort of the peace offering approach, like Nintendo gives Ubisoft the Mario license for Rabbids. That does really well, and then maybe that opens the door for more. Although they are having trouble with Steep supposedly, which is odd. But yeah, maybe that's sort of the way to make new connections with the bigger publishers, to say, hey, let's do something like this. But at the same time, every time you do that, it just further reinforces the Nintendo domination of the Nintendo platform, and I feel like it needs to expand beyond that. I do also think that by the end of this year, we're talking a lot about 2018 things. If they can reach that 10 million, I mean, that's over double from where they're at right now. We expect them to be just under or right around 5 million units currently, and I think even doubling that to 10, like, that's a lot better of an install base to push your game to, right? You're going to put something out, hey, we have 10 million potential buyers versus 5 million versus 2 million a couple months ago versus 1 million, right at launch, whatever the numbers exactly were. I think this is going to grow and hopefully get to a point where the EAs and the 2Ks see the success of not only their own titles, but what studios from Bandai Namco, from Capcom are putting out, and are able to, want to get in and reap some of those profits as well.
For sure.
So that is what we feel about these different publishers and their diverse takes. It seems like everybody is intrigued, but how many of them will actually follow through? Let us know which companies you think are going to be major Switch supporters in 2018. And if you feel like any of these strategies is better or worse than others, we're curious to hear your take. Give us your thoughts. And until next time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. For myself, Jake, and Gabe, Switch Force out.